All right.
Hello, fermented folks. Welcome to another episode of Fermented Fiction, the show where we discuss genre fiction in all its forms through debate, drinking beer, and talking shit to each other primarily. Today, we are joined by my friend and fellow PNW horror writer, JP Barnett. Hello, JP. Thanks for being here.
Hello.
And as usual, we have our co-hosts, the usual suspects, me, my brother Travis, and Jeremy Hudson.
I'm not suspected of anything. Who would say that I was?
I find that highly suspect. And we will start, as we always do, with a round of personal updates. And since Jeremy claims to be so innocent, we'll just start with you, Jeremy. I suspect that you have something to tell us about yourself.
Oh, about myself? Well, now that you mention it. No, not about myself, but my wife and I, we took a trip to Everett, Washington to see our dog's cardiologist, and she doesn't have to be on blood thinners anymore.
Good.
Hell yeah.
Woo! That's a good deal.
And that confirms my suspicions all along that she was, in fact, the goodest girl. So, yeah.
It's nice.
Pretty sick.
Well, that controversy can be laid to rest at long last. Those questions have been answered, and I'm glad that her blood is thin enough to flow through her little veins and arteries.
Yeah, man. We're all pretty jazzed about it.
She is a great girl, and she should have healthy blood. So I'm glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Do you have to keep this cardiologist still? Or, oh, there she is now.
Oh, yeah.
That's Agnes.
Yes, hello, baby.
That was not Agnes. Agnes
that was
chewing right next to me.
was Isla. She's all the way downstairs, but she's got some lungs on her. But I mean, we're still gonna keep taking her to a cardiologist because she still has a malformed valve and some minor heart damage. But you would never ever know because she's also a little furry wrecking ball.
Absolutely.
So
Much like
great.
Travis's dog, Agnes, which is a corgi, and probably right down there eating something that she's not supposed to.
No, this she's supposed to. She's allowed to eat the thing she's eating.
Oh, thank goodness.
Well, that's a new one. Travis, what's your personal update? I assume it's not that Agnes is, for once, not being an absolute hell.
Hey, she has gotten better. She's learning. She's getting older and wiser. But
for twice then.
Had 2.5 years. But my update, so I tried to have him come on and do it for us. As you all know, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, Pedro Pascal is a constant guest, but he's very, very humble and shy man. Are you sure? Yeah, he won't come on and talk.
Yeah, he doesn't want to steal it.
It's actually why they had the helmet rule in The Mandalorian, because Pedro did not want to be on camera anymore. He was overexposed, overstimulated in Game of Thrones, and he was like, not this time.
100%. And he's just so humble and amazing. But
absolutely.
I just want to give an update for Pedro of the new Fantastic Four trailer dropped, and it looks like maybe our boy Pedro is going to steer that MCU ship back in the right direction. Maybe. I'm hopeful for the first time in a while.
Dream with us.
Yeah.
It'll do it.
The new Captain America comes out this weekend, and that could do it, but the fact that it's had like 7 reshoots and is one of the most expensive films ever made after that doesn't bode well. So Pedro's new film, I'm kind of like, okay, is this the one? Does this bring us back? It might. That's my update.
Excellent. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. If anyone can do it, it's you, Pedro. We believe in you. Well, my personal update is Eagles won the Super Bowl.
No birds.
They did though, and it was really awesome to watch them just absolutely demolish the Kansas City Chiefs.
Gave them a ruddy good seeing too. Oh boy.
It was not even a game. As you can all see, Travis is an Eagles fan. He spent some time in Philly. Unfortunately, he was not able to participate in burning the city of Philadelphia to the ground because he's way out here in Montana. But I'm sure that was
he didn't get to punch even a single police horse.
No.
So
I didn't get to eat any poop. Didn't get to tear down any light poles. None of that.
Are you even a real fan?
I
Like-
guess not. Probably not.
Next
Maybe
year
next
you gotta
time,
make a
bud.
trip
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me, personal update. I don't know if I've ever announced it on this show, but I am this year going to be the horror track lead for WorldCon, which is really exciting for me. So I have to come up with this approximately 26 hours of programming for it because it's massive. If you don't know, WorldCon is where they award the Hugo Award, which for fantasy is essentially the Emmys, the Academy Award for fantasy. It's one of the biggest awards you can win as a fantasy author. But they also factor in, or sci-fi. Sci-fi, you can win a Hugo for sci-fi as well. But they bring in horror and they bring in a couple of other genres to like romance to also be there and have a representation. So I am leading up the horror track, and I had my meeting with my overseer tonight, who the person who kind of oversees all of the track leads. And yeah, they seemed really happy with my progress. All my panels so far got approved. I've written 17 out of 26.
Wow.
So yeah, over half of my panels proposed got approved, which is exciting. And so now we're moving forward. And I mean, this is awesome. Like the panelist list is just, it's Hugo. It's the Hugos. So like Ellen Datlow is going to be there. Like I might be able to put Ellen Datlow on some panels. Like George R.R. Martin might be there. I don't think I'll have him, obviously, because he's not. But I don't know. He wrote horror for a long time. So it's possible I could get George R.R. Martin on a panel. Like, that's just insane to me to even, like, be in an Excel sheet that also has his name in it and is like, this is actually a feasibly, potentially possible thing.
Yeah, like
so
an Excel
it's
sheet that matters.
That's an Excel sheet that matters, my guy. So it's exciting. I'm stoked to be doing it. And it's really letting me flex my programming muscles because I've been doing Crypticon for a couple of years now. And that's 5 hours of programming. So this is a lot bigger, a lot higher stakes, bigger panelists and stuff. So way more attendance. It wouldn't fit in the convention place we use for Crypticon, obviously. So yeah, it's exciting. I am having a good time with it. And hopefully I'll see some of you people there. If any of you are huge sci-fi, fantasy, horror fans, WorldCon literally travels the world. Last year was in Scotland. So like, if you want to come to it, this might be one of the best years for you as an American. Like, it's in Seattle. And I don't know when it was last in America, but it was 4 or 5 years ago. So it doesn't come every year. It is a big opportunity. But anyway, if anyone's coming out, hit me up. Let me know in the comments, and I'll hit you back up. And hopefully we can meet up and hang out.
All right.
And that leads us to our guest, JP Barnett, somebody who does every conference under the sun, at least under the Pacific Northwest sun. JP
or lack
goes
thereof.
or the lack thereof, the Pacific Northwest overcast. JP, how you doing, man? Thank you so much for coming on the show. We always love to have you. You are a veteran of the show. But still, introduce yourself. We have some new listeners, and introduce yourself. Let them know what you're up to, what you write, what you do, and why the hell you're here.
All right. Well, I'm JP Barnett. You already mentioned that. I write books, ostensibly horror, but they're pretty gentle horror. Not the kind that's going to give you too many nightmares. They kind of fall in the new adult. They're about two college girls that hunt monsters instead of going to class. 6 books, completely done. So I'm not going to George R.R. Martin it. You can read the whole series. I promise. I am working on a new series now. It's about demons. It's called Outer Demons, and it's the first in a 2-book series. So I don't even call that a series, a duology that I'm working on. So hopefully that'll come out towards the end of the year.
Nice.
How's that coming along, man? I heard about it like a long time ago, and I know your deadline was coming up. Have you finished the first draft? Is it in the editor's hands? Any kind of release ideas or?
Yeah, no, and no. So the deadline was back in September. I missed that deadline. I kind of just didn't say anything to the publisher. They just hit me up a couple weeks ago about like, hey, you gonna do that? So yeah, I'm working on it. I think I'll have it ready for the editor in April or May. And he turns around it pretty quick. So the plan is still to get it out like maybe October or November of this year.
Nice, awesome.
And then hopefully the sequel comes quicker because I'll have it has been much more difficult than I expected to create new characters in a new world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something I'd like to talk about later in the show when we're doing our open table. But I imagine after you've written a 6-book series with the same characters, it's hard to like completely start over, lay completely new groundwork. And then you're also writing to a much older audience with this new one, as I understand it. So
Hopefully, we'll see how it turns out. But yeah, that's the goal.
your publisher hits you up there like, so we said September 2024, right?
Yep. It's a great thing about the industry, though. There's not a lot. Like it is what it is. What can they do?
Yeah, right.
And what can I do? It's not done. So it's not done. Working on
That's
it.
how it is. Yep. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you're working on it. You have a good publisher, and I know you guys have a good relationship. So I'm sure
We
you're
do.
working on it.
They're great.
Evolved Publishing, or is it Evolve? It's Evolved.
Evolved, like the past
Yeah.
tense. Yeah.
Oh, they've already done it. That's good.
Yes,
They've
they're already
done it.
evolved. Yes.
Past tense. No, they're awesome. I like all the work that I've read from them, including your books. But yeah, so check out Evolve Publishing. Check out JP's stuff. There will be links in the show notes, and we will plug all this again at the end of the show. Until then, you're going to have to listen to this show, motherfuckers. And we're going to start tonight by doing our debate section, which is titled Forced Enrollment, courtesy of Philip Bridgers. And that's because somebody's going to be forced to be a troll, and somebody is going to be forced to defend the Candyman, tonight's topic,
Just
whether they
Candyman.
like it or not. Sorry, just Candyman, whether they
Just a
like it or not.
Candyman, not the one.
not
It's
the-
one of
The
them.
only Candyman. Candyman is the whole damn hive. Okay, we're all aware of this. But tonight, representing
Oh no.
Oh, you doing okay there, bud?
We
Thank you
lost the
for-
clay.
We lost the clay. Representing fermented fiction, I think is what he was going to say, is me, Travis.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, and I'm going to roll against JP, and it's probably going to be said again when Clay comes back in with his Wi-Fi. Sorry, folks, but
hey, you guys still got me?
yeah, there you
Hey,
are.
welcome back.
Hey. Yes.
Are you
I
there?
thought you died.
I did die.
Okay. I
Back from the
introduced
dead.
myself as representing fermented fiction, and I will be rolling against and debating against JP.
Excellent.
Sweet.
So you already know what the deal is.
Yep.
And on that note, Jeremy, do you want to get the timer?
Yeah, I
Ooh.
got your timer. I
Ooh.
got your timer right here, man.
I rolled.
Okay. You rolled. Oh my goodness.
Hands up. I
Well,
rolled.
hey, yeah. So we got your 10-minute timer, forced enrollment, ready to go. Now, by all means, roll. Let's see.
What'd you get, Clay? A
16.
16?
16.
I got a 19.
Oh,
Hey.
snap.
Yeah.
Well, that's uncharacteristic.
I know I did good for once.
Did you tell
um,
your dice that you were rolling for someone else?
Yes, I whispered to him, "This isn't for me. This isn't for me, guys. This is for someone else." Okay, I'm ready.
666.
JP, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so I'm arguing for, you're arguing against.
All right. So, want a good clean fight. Rules are minimal. Shots below the belt are permitted, as well as trickery and shenanigans. But we don't want any razor blades and candy. That's bad, and that'll end you on the news.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep.
So, let's just have it out in 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, so Candyman, the remake, is what we're discussing, not the original 1992 film. The 2021 film is a very, I think, undisputably well-made horror film. Like, it's visually quite good. And relative newcomer director Nia DaCosta really put a lot of work into this film. It was produced by Jordan Peele, and he rarely lets his name be stamped on anything that isn't good. So it's kind of easy to see that this was going to be good. First thing I will say in defense of Candyman is I think it was a very clever way to tie a sequel to its original film. It's clearly a movie about kind of the racial justice issues, especially that were happening at the time. And they could have just divorced themselves entirely from the original film that has some of those themes, but not as overtly as in this one. But I think what they did was very, very powerful in tying the primary character, spoilers, to the baby in the original film of I'm forgetting names. I'll get it. One sec. Helen Lyle, the sort of grad student that kind of finds the Candyman and has the whole run-in with the child and the Candyman trying to burn the child as a sacrifice. I thought that was a very clever tie-in to bring him back to the neighborhood as this person kind of returning to a place that's now gentrified and seeing all of these kind of oppressive societal things being put onto it. And so we get that as a personal thing for him as well as a societal thing from what we actually see on screen with the sort of urban area in itself in Chicago. I think another great thing this movie does, I already mentioned visuals. Sound design is absolutely phenomenal in this film. It does not really like to show a lot of the gore. Some of it, yes, there's some throat slits, there's some blood spurts, but a lot of the horror that comes from the Candyman's kills comes from the just impeccable sound design. I hate when I have subtitles on for a movie like this because it's these like really, really well done sound design moments are ruined by the bottom screen saying squelching noises. I'm like, I don't want to see squelching noises. I'm hearing the like carnage that's happening and I'm seeing the blood run on the floor, and like I'm getting the sense of the horror that's happening off camera, which I always think is more scary than what we can possibly put on camera, is what our own minds will work into that. So I think those are my first 2 points of, I thought this was a really well done tie-in to the original, and I thought it was, the sound design and visuals were incredible. Nia DaCosta, this was only her third movie, I think, and she knocked it out of the park.
All right. Well, first, I will acknowledge that the movie is clearly about an experience that I, as a very white person, can't understand entirely. So, but I did roll the low roll. So here we go. First of all, I think that the problem with the movie is you kind of already admitted to, which is there isn't a lot of gore, and at the end of the day, it's not very scary. It's probably I especially for the first, I don't know, half of the movie, it's not scary at all. I think it could be a lot scarier. I also think that, you know, it did tie back to the original Candyman, and that's good if you're doing a remake-wul, I guess is what I would call this. But you kind of abandon the original Candyman entirely as not just Tony Todd, which would have been awesome if he was in the whole movie, but they didn't even use Robitaille, which was his character in the first one. They invented a new guy. And I get that there was a point to that. Like, I think there was a narrative point to that, but I don't know that they tied them together as well as could have been. And then there's also a lot of things in the movie that kind of go nowhere. Like there's a flashback with Brianna's dad committing suicide in front of her, and that doesn't matter at all. It never comes back. They don't talk about it. It doesn't influence anything that she does. They don't even really explain why he did it. Like, I feel like maybe, you know, if they tied it into like the racial justice thing, like he did it for something related to that maybe, but they didn't even explain that. And then another example is the new Candyman guy who was accused of putting razor blades in candy. The laundromat guy, I forgot his name, William, maybe, in the movie, said that he was exonerated because razor blade candy kept coming out. But then there's the elevator scene where that guy gives the main character, Anthony, razor blade candy. So did he do it? Did he not? I don't know. It kind of like, it takes away the sentimental connection to that character, I feel like. So I felt like there was a lot of muddled things where they didn't kind of nail I appreciate the rhetorical goals, but they didn't quite nail it as hard as they could have.
I do think they actually did bring up the father scene again. There's a discussion between the two siblings where they're sitting on the couch, and basically the brother mentions kind of like something about supporting starving artists and can they sell his art, and she has this kind of visceral reaction, and I thought that really added and bolstered a depth to her character that we weren't getting up until that point of like, oh, I can see why she's attracted to the man she's attracted to, but why she's also hesitant to like come to his aid is because that clearly happened with her father, who was a starving artist whose art drove him to suicide, and we get that in this one little subtle line. But like it really kind of pulled all of the stuff with Anthony together of like, oh, so she's probably attracted to similar people as like her father figure, and she's also probably repulsed by the behavior that he's exhibiting because that's what drove her father to suicide. And now her boyfriend, fiance, husband, I couldn't really tell, is like drawing all this crazy art, and like it's all tied to murders. And so she's like, I don't want to go through this again. And I did think to just kind of put a little post-it note on the end of this is one of the other benefits of this film is all the performances were fantastic. The cast and crew really brought their A game. I thought especially Tayana Paris, yeah, that's it. Okay, and Nathan Stewart Jarrett, the two siblings, I thought they did a fantastic job. She actually would go on to be in Miss Marvel and the Marvels and the show
WandaVision.
WandaVision, which those productions aren't my favorite, but I think she shines in all of them as like good thing they grabbed her up after seeing this performance because it was fantastic and she kept just doing knockout work. And then I really thought I'm gonna butcher his name. I'm sorry, Yahya Abdul Mateen II, who played Anthony McCoy. He did a really good job in kind of like this subtle insanity that started to creep in once he saw the Candyman. I think he also got snagged up by Marvel after this, but that'll probably be during trivia. But yeah, I thought the performances were really good.
He was actually Black Manta in Aquaman, so DC snagged him.
DC snagged him.
Yeah. And also Nia DaCosta directed the Marvels, which also had to be on Paris.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're not in the fact. I got nerdy there for a second. So going to the beginning about her father. So that was very subtle. You definitely read into it more than I did. And I will say that that's probably the most subtle thing about the movie. And another thing that I think is makes it not as good as some of the other horror movies that I would say are in this sub genre, like Get Out or Us, where it's pretty heavy-handed. Like the message is they don't trust the audience, even an iota, to kind of pick up on the messages that they're trying to get across. And the thing is, if you look at the original Candyman, those same messages were there, right? They were talking about racial injustice and especially appropriation in the first Candyman, but it was really subtle and it let the viewer pick up that on their own. And I feel like this movie didn't do that, and so it's not as powerful. Like you don't have that connection with it. You're more just being lectured at for parts of the movie, and I think that was kind of a weakness of the movie that made it not. I know Jordan Peele didn't direct this, but he did write it and produce it, I think, and it didn't have that same level of like elevated subtlety that maybe he had in his other movies. Not to Get Out is terribly subtle, but it's more executed with more finesse, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's something else. And then Candyman himself as a villain is also just kind of a mess. And then they just added more on top of him, right? There's bees and there's a hook, and you talk to him through a mirror, and he climbs through holes in walls, and you can see him, and sometimes you can't see him. And yeah, so like I feel like the rules of Candyman are very confusing, and they just added more on top of it. And like Anthony got stung by a bee, and then he just doesn't go to the doctor until like way late in the movie. Like he dealt with that for like I don't know how long, but like yeah. So that was also a little strange for me. Kind of took me out of the movie where I was like, the guy is literally decaying.
Nope, we're done. You're done. You gotta put that away.
Decaying.
Just pinch it off there, bud.
Well done. Virtual handshake.
Yeah.
It was very good. Good game, everyone. Wonderful. Yeah.
All right.
Mm,
Well,
very good.
I would say I actually love the movie, so Just
All
for the
right.
record.
All right.
Yeah, good movie.
Well, we'll definitely get into that on the open discussion, but I will start us off, Clay, with beer of the week because mine's really boring. I've been
it.
sick for 2 days, so
Gross.
agua. That is my
Blue
fermented
Dolphin.
drink of the
Just
Blue
rain.
Dolphin.
Drinking
Not putting
fucking
any
rain.
not putting any alcohol in my system when I just got over sickness. So there I am.
That's fair. It's going around. Deanna's just coming out the other side of it too. I somehow have not gotten it yet, and I will knock on some wood for that.
Well, thank you.
But we'll see. Jeremy, what are you doing, pal?
Well, I have this Roku gin for my beer of the week,
Okay.
and some tonic, and a big old glass.
Gin and tonic.
Yeah. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Classic. The only drink that exists on every planet in the entire galaxy.
Every language has a different one.
Yep,
Maker's Guide.
Yep.
they sure do. JP, I know you don't drink, but are you drinking
don't.
anything delicious tonight?
Well, right now it's just a big giant bottle of water. But right before I came on, I had one of these new Cokes. They have a new flavor called orange cream. It's not good.
Ooh.
I don't
It's
recommend
not good. Oh,
Not good.
not
It
good.
kind of tastes like a really bad crush, like orange soda. But
Oh
bad.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
Oh,
gonna have a hot take and just go ahead and disagree because I also drank one right before this show.
Oh yeah, and you enjoyed it?
Yeah, but I'm one of those weirdos. I'm like, ooh, new flavor? Yes, please.
Oh, I always try the new flavors. Most
Oh,
of
yeah,
them are not
yeah, you
not
kinda
great,
have
but
to.
yeah.
They're not all hits, but they don't all.
Coke's like-
all miss either.
Coke is like Oreo. It's like just stop.
Yeah.
Just you did
Just
it
be
right
Coke.
first time. Just stop
Yeah, stop.
trying.
So, well, they made an Oreo Coke, so they joined forces for a
Oh
while.
my God.
Yeah, that was weird.
It wasn't great. I miss cinnamon Coke. Cinnamon Coke was good.
Oh, okay.
Well, I see Candyman. That's one of the most classic horror movies ever. Obviously, not just for historical and racial reasons, but also just because it's a damn good slasher film. And one of the reasons I like it more than other slashers is because it does incorporate that supernatural element. I'm always more willing to watch something if it's got supernatural elements. And so I'm going with a classic beer today. I'm just going with a good old Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Best of
I
the
mean,
bad beers.
It's award winning. So
Yeah.
It
And
is.
and
This
they let you know.
award-winning beer has a blue ass ribbon, and it always will.
Mhm.
And we had a 30 rack of these for the Super Bowl, and this one is the lone survivor.
Nice.
wow.
So I felt that it was fitting to honor it on air. This guy came home when 29 other comrades fell to the thirst of my Super Bowl party
Nice.
as we tried to drink away the boringness of that Eagles Chiefs game.
I had a great time.
Well, yeah, every Eagles fan had a great time. I don't know, man. Even if you like the team, it's like you want to at least see a game. You don't want to see a scrimmage. Like that was
Stop kicking him. He's already dead.
leave Patrick alone.
Yeah.
No, it was good. Patrick deserved that. All right, so we're moving on from football because this is very much not a football podcast.
No, it is not.
Shenanigans.
PBR.
Do you have trivia? Do I have fermented facts?
I have fermented facts, and you can
Oh.
chip in some if you have some as well.
Yeah,
All
just
right, you
throw
go.
some in there.
But I have
You
10
go.
of them, motherfuckers.
I love it.
Oh.
All right. So the first of my fermented facts. This actually comes from a Clive Barker story that was written way back in the time that Clive Barker was writing stories. And it was titled The Forbidden. It was actually set in Britain and dealt with the class system. But when it was adapted to Candyman for American audiences, the same themes were used with racial relations, since that was a much more relevant American topic, obviously. That is sort of largely what the class system takes shape as in American history. So it was a topical story to be applied to the American audience through a different lens. And I think they've done a really good job of that through both of these film adaptations. One fun fact, Eddie Murphy was at one point considered for the Candyman title role in the original film, but was ultimately deemed too short at 5'9". So they went with Tony Todd at 6'5" instead. And I do have to agree that Tony Todd is intimidating as all hell. So it was a good call.
Very different movie.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that Eddie Murphy as Candyman?
No.
You know? That I'm glad it was Tony Todd. Tony Todd crushed it. Not that Eddie Murphy's not amazing. He obviously is, but this was like Tony Todd's most famous role of all time. And many of us may have never even really known about him had he not popped out in this.
I think in horror movies, he also has the fame of being the harbinger in the Final Destination movies, which is, I love the little connection there. It's very fun.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But those came after Candyman.
Yeah.
So, like, would he have gotten that role if he wasn't Candyman? Who knows?
Who knows?
And I'm glad he did, and I'm glad he was. Eddie Murphy's got enough stuff going on for him.
It's a shame that we didn't have the technology in 1992 to make someone 5'9" look 6'5". Movies have come a long way.
Thank God. There's some things that, maybe it's just best that they were the way they were. But here we are. Another go ahead and imagine this too. Now, so you've got Eddie Murphy in your head. Eddie Murphy's gonna appear in the mirror after you do this. In the original script, saying Candyman's name 13 times summoned him.
Oh, Jesus.
But it was reduced to 5.
That would have been boring.
As Bernard Rose felt 13 was a bit excessive.
Yeah.
Honestly, 5's a little much.
5 is a lot.
Yeah. When she has to sit in the mirror at the end in the cop car, I'm like, oh my gosh, this took forever.
It takes so long. You want like the rule of 3. Humans are such fickle creatures and our attention spans doubly so. And so like sitting there while she says it past that rule of 3, you're like, okay. Every single time. You're like, how many times we got to do this? Imagine if it was fucking 13.
That would have doubled the length of the film.
I'm like, what's up? Why does Candyman care if it's 5? Like, if you just double, is it like a confirmation box? Like double checking that you really want to call it?
Yeah, it's like it's like 2 kappas when you have to do 2 kappas.
Yeah, exactly.
So you do the 3 is really what does it, but then you have to.
You want to weed it out, You want to make sure that somebody just doesn't have a stutter,
right?
You got to mean it.
And does somebody with a stutter actually do it twice as fast, or does only every intentional Candyman do the thing? Which, by the way, by the end of this episode, we will have all in some way said Candyman 5 times into a mirror.
For sure. Yeah.
Just saying. So we'll see how that goes for us.
See if there's another episode.
Maybe this is the last beer of the week.
The last podcast.
If I just fly off that way, you all know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just see me dangling up above you, kicking my feet, sorry. That's not really something anybody wants to see. It's going to be really gross. There will be a lot of blood, and
we frankly should have known better.
Yeah. But hey, we might become really famous if that happens live on camera. We probably will, at least for a while, till they take it off YouTube. So you got that, and there's always a silver lining. Fun fact number 4: Jordan Peele was originally attached to direct this project, but switched to a production role after he brought on Nia DaCosta, which was awesome because Nia DaCosta set a record with this movie as the first black female filmmaker to have a movie open at #1 in the box office. So nice. Good for her. Good for Candyman. Good for everything about this movie. Nia DaCosta is awesome. And I thought she did a really good job in this film. Intermixing all kinds of different visual mediums and approaching the topics the way she did, and not just doing a straight up reboot, but rather doing a sequel. All those things are good choices.
Mm-hmm.
This movie was originally scheduled to be released in 2020, but due to COVID-19, it was delayed to September 25th, then October 16th, and then eventually August 27th, 2021. So it was actually delayed 3 times and announced to be released 3 separate times, and it still opened as #1 in the box office, which is pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
This is a cool fact for in the movie, so go ahead and go back and watch it after you listen to this podcast. But as Candyman circles the police car at the end, his reflection shows a different Candyman each time he passes a window.
Mm-hmm.
So in every single window, it's a different member of the Candyman hive, which is really cool. So definitely like go back and watch. Once I found out this fact, I did go back and watch it, and it is really cool. And you can see Tony Todd reprising his role in one of those instances. Speaking of that, Tony Todd, Vanessa A. Williams, and Virginia Madsen, in a way, all reprise their role from the original film in this movie. Movie producers, this is the original Candyman. So when they shot the original Candyman, movie producers were worried about a black man playing the lead role. They went to the NAACP, which supported the film, and reminded white producers that black ghosts were worthy of having stories too. No fucking shit. But they did. They went to the NAACP before they signed off on this. And another fun fact is Tony Todd did the same thing because he was worried that a black slasher would be portrayed as and interpreted as both racist. And he wanted to make sure the NAACP supported this whole thing. And they did, which is really good because I agree. It's really important that all of us have equal representation in these regards, including being villains.
And also, like, if you make the leads of this film white, the moral of the story becomes black people are scary.
Yeah,
so
that's true. And
I don't like that.
Which is a little bit of a problem with the
saying
first
I
movie,
don't
right?
like that.
Little
Right.
bit of, yeah,
Maybe.
first movie.
I'll never know what's in that first film.
It's impossible to find out.
You're such a piece of shit, Jeremy.
All copies have been destroyed.
Sure.
Jeremy can't watch it anymore.
I'm not saying I can't. I know that I won't.
Even if we do Candyman next season, Jeremy still won't watch it.
Yeah,
So that's just
I mean,
the
I've
way
already
it
gone
is.
on the
That's just
record.
the way it is.
I'm on the record, and like, what am I supposed to do now? Back
Stick to your
out?
guns. Stick to
Yeah.
your guns.
Gotta stick to them. They're
I
there
need to
for a
double
reason.
down.
So speaking of Tony Todd, he was quoted as saying, "I've done 200 movies. This is the one that stays in people's minds. It affects people of all races. It's used as an introductory tool in gang intervention work. What frightens you? What horrible things have you experienced?" So that's something Tony Todd did after this movie. He went around and did lots of gang intervention workshops, trying to bring peace to divided neighborhoods and stuff. And I think that's really cool. I'm always a big fan of artists who do that. Another, speaking of the Super Bowl, Kendrick Lamar is really famous for doing that kind of stuff as well. Though there's no obviously love lost between him and certain people. But fuck that guy anyway. And then my final fun fact, and if you have any more to add, Travis, you can. In Candyman, Todd's titular character, the original Candyman that is the ghost of artist Daniel Robitaille, a black man who was lynched in the 19th century. So I like how in this new movie, they reprise that. They bring it back full circle as a sort of bookend. Our newest Candyman is an artist as well. And this movie very much approaches that directly, the intersection of race and art, the intersection of societal oppression and art, and how that can be misinterpreted by not only the general public, but those in the fucking industry. Like the way that art critic speaks to him is boils my blood. So I love that. I love that scene where he's like, you should say it, you know. That's fucking awesome. But I like how the original Candyman was an artist, and so is this Candyman. It kind of brings it full circle. That's all my facts. Travis, you got anything you want to add?
Only, did y'all notice the little Clive Barker Easter egg in it?
No, what's that?
One of his books is in there, and then also there's a character named Clive.
Yep, there's a character named Clive that's a direct call to Clive Barker, and then Weave Man, I think it's called. Yeah, Weave World is being read by William Burke in the laundromat when he like goes back to the laundromat to talk to William when all the stuff is cascading down. And I was very proud of myself. I didn't have to look that one up. I like was kind of, once JP emailed us and said the Clive Barker story thing, I was like, every book I was like, is that Clive Barker? And I saw that one and I was like, that's Clive Barker right there.
I think it's also fitting that Clive died first or second. Like they literally killed the author of the original story as part of the movie
right away. But that is the only one I have to add. I mean, there were a lot of fun facts, but I think you got a lot of the good ones.
Well, cool. That's so that is fermented facts, everybody, and we are now going to get into our open table, and we always start that with our person who rolled low gets to tell us how they really felt. So, JP, how did you actually feel about Jordan Peele's Candyman reprise?
I've already spoiled it, but I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it's a really great movie. I kind of agree with the only negative thing I said about it I agree with is I don't think it's very scary, but then again, it's pretty hard to scare me these days.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the most brilliant thing about it, like when I sit down and think about it, is that not only is it a sequel, but all of the new things you learn about Candyman make sense because now you're getting them from the black point of view. And in the first movie, you're getting it from the white point of view, who's not taking in the whole story and is unwilling to learn the whole story, is uncomfortable with the whole story.
Yeah.
And so all of this lore building they did with Candyman in this movie just felt 100% natural. Like it was just a part of the world that we didn't get to see because of the point of view in the first movie. And I think that's the most brilliant part of it.
That's a fantastic point. And isn't that such a sign of the times and such a difference between the two movies just as a whole? It's like this movie couldn't have even been made the way it was made in 1992. Not a fucking
Nobody
chance.
would ever greenlit that.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I'm actually surprised the one that they made in 92 got made on some level.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously, with such a prominent black role. Yeah, absolutely. And such a message. I mean, it still had that message. It still had that message of social justice and inequity and all that. But like it was, like you said, from the white point of view. And there was that element of like, oh, this is scary. The other is scary. And here's the other as the fucking Candyman. So yeah, kind of scary. But that's not at all the case in this one. Almost all the characters are black in this movie, except for a couple. And all of them die.
All of them die. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty brutally.
Pretty brutally.
And had it coming. And we're pretty happy with it. Like, had it coming.
Absolutely. I was rooting for absolutely none of those people. So I was okay with it.
I think in general, it's interesting that Candyman in this movie, by the end of the movie, he's almost not a villain at all. He's almost an anti-hero, right? He's like Venom or Spawn at this point. Like you hope he comes and kills the bad people for you.
Yeah, he's a representation of the problem, you know.
Yep.
He's or if not the problem itself, a systemic reaction to the problem at least. And he definitely represents that really well. Travis, what did you actually think? Did you agree with what you rolled?
I did agree with everything I said, but then I would add some. I liked it a lot. I didn't love it. So I was actually very conflicted with the ending because I get what they were trying to say, but the fact that she like uses Candyman as a weapon and it's in a scene, I get that it's in a scene against the cops who are clearly in the wrong and being evil, but the scene before that is him killing school children. And it almost tries to like justify it with this like black girls being bullied by the white girls. And I'm like, I don't think they were trying to justify that, but to me, I'm like, I don't care. They're school children. Like, you kill school children, that's bad. Like, no matter which way you skin it. And then to have the final scene be like the main character kind of using Candyman as like a weapon and saying that 5 times so that the cops get like their just desserts, which they do. I was very conflicted about that of like, okay, why did we have to have the high school girls scene at all? Like, why did we need that in the movie? If that didn't exist, I don't think that anything's detracted from the movie, and I don't think anything's added by it. In fact, I think it kind of detracts from the message they're trying to say, because it's like Candyman becoming this anti-hero is totally dimmed down, I think, by the high school girl slaughter scene. Because to me, I'm just like, they're teenagers. Like, they don't know what they're doing and know that what they're doing is not right, but they're teenagers. Like, we shouldn't be cheering for a slasher serial killer ghost to kill 5 teenagers, no matter what, you know. So that was one of my criticisms. And then I actually kind of agree with your point, JP. And then I'll get to the good stuff, because I did genuinely like this movie. But I just had some critiques. I do think it's pretty unsubtle. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. So I don't know how to feel about it. But I do think you were right in pointing that out. I think sometimes these messages really just don't need to be subtle. Like, just shove them in our face. We need to see them. But even to the point of the main catchphrase in 2021 being "say his name," I was like, okay, that's very blunt. Which was like a good blunt, but then at the same time, the whole movie was very predictable. And like as soon as the story's told about the baby, I was like, main character's the baby, guarantee it. And then it like happened. And with that, my last criticism, and then the good stuff is William Burke didn't get that whole twist. He was the laundryman and he's like telling the story, and then all of a sudden he's a villain and he's trying to sacrifice the like kid, and he's kind of the reveal that he was a baby the whole time, and it kind of just seemed to come out of left field writing wise, where I was like, okay, I never got any hints that he was like evil until a scene ago when he captures the girlfriend. So there was just some of that stuff where I felt like it wasn't teased out well enough. But everything I said about the visuals, the acting, like the scene where the art critic gets killed from the distance, and you like see her body get lifted into the window and drug. I was like, whoa,
I mean,
that was good. Like that was really good. As much as I kind of
was awesome.
As much as I kind of hate the
God.
potential message of the high school slaughter scene, I thought the high school slaughter scene was like very, very well done. The sound being the horrific thing, and like this girl just trying to get away from it, and the mirror was used in a really clever way. I really, really like Nia DaCosta's work, and I'm kind of sad she got picked up by Marvel so fast, because I would have loved to see her in the indie scene for a little bit longer, not given all this money to make a superhero film. Because
yeah, give her some A24 or some Blumhouse.
Give her
I would
something.
love to see a few of those.
Yeah, because like as much as I love some Marvel movies, I think they're so bogged down by production and by like what the audience wants, that I would have just loved to see Nia's next project be something that wasn't so Hollywood summer blockbustery. But I think she did really visually well with the Marvels. I just didn't necessarily love the writing of it, but that wasn't her fault. I don't think she wrote it. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, visually, acting wise, this is a great horror movie. Like I would never tell someone to skip it. I just have those small things that I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on, but they made it good, not great for me.
Well,
Speaking
I think
oh, sorry,
that oh yeah. Well, I think if anything, the killing of the teenagers kind of had to be there as like a staple of the slasher genre.
Slashers work, yeah.
Like that's just okay. Look, you don't have to steer into every trope, but if you steer away from all of them, you're just not left with the same thing. You got to kill some teenagers, and honestly, that was the most believable part of the movie for me, was that like, oh, who's gonna try and summon Candyman? Oh, that's right, 5 white children. Obviously, it didn't make sense to me most like that. The main character would try to summon a killer ghost, because frankly, that's some white people shit. That's the dumb stuff that we get up to. Okay. But that's maybe just me. I don't know.
Maybe Candyman has no choice, right? If you call him, maybe he has to kill you. So
yeah.
And they did.
I mean, it seems like
that's how it works.
It seems like it's race-based, which is because, the main character, the real McCoy himself, he does the whole thing. He summons Candyman. He lives through most of the movie.
When he summons Candyman kills for him. And so same with Brianna when she summons him right at the end.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It either kills for you or kills you.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think those are tied together. Those are two things that Travis spoke to that I wanted to address, which was the laundromat guy. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Did you say Burke?
What was William Burke.
William Burke. Yeah, Burke. So Burke and that teenager scene. I think the teenager scene had to be there as well, but for a different reason. I think it had to be there to remind us that this is a weapon that you're using. So yeah, it feels fine when you use it on like the bad guys, quote unquote, but it doesn't. It's still a weapon and it still exists. And like, it being out there is still a bad thing.
Mhm.
And I don't think that undermines the anti-hero story. I think that makes it more realistic. If you're a real anti-hero, you have to have that you have to have some shit that you're doing that is morally dejectable in some way, to the general population. And I do think that that's what that scene reminds us of, is that, like, yes, there's going to be people who deserve to get killed, and we see that all throughout the movie. Most of the people who die, I would say, we as an audience believe deserved it. Maybe not to die, but believe deserved punishment, deserved wrath and retribution, that Candyman represents. But the teenager scene, like you said, Travis, it's bullying. It's still shitty. Of course, it's bad human behavior. We don't want to see it. We don't want it to happen. But it's not the same as what the cops were doing. I guess you could see it as an earlier version of the same thing, though. Societal oppression at every level is kind of addressed in this movie, and that's a good thing too. But ultimately, I think it's mostly there just to remind us of that. They're like, there's different levels of deserving retribution and wrath, and it's the same thing regardless when it's Candyman that shows up to deliver it to you, and that's unfortunate. And the other thing, I think Burke represents that wrath as much as the Candyman does, if not more so as a human. He represents it like as a human. He's the one intentionally summoning this into the world.
Yeah.
Because
I don't-
Candyman seems pretty amoral, but somebody pointing a Candyman at you, that's a choice.
I definitely get the point of Burke. That is not my criticism at all. I think the point of Burke just comes out of nowhere. Like, Burke is like, I didn't see it coming, and maybe that's on me, but I really just I was like, okay, he's like the Harbinger character. He's telling the story. And then all of a sudden he's got like Anthony tied up in a church, and he's like, it is wrath. And I was like, okay, William Burke is like a villain now. What's going on here? But
so my take on why Burke did what he did, I wouldn't say that I saw it coming, but I also didn't feel like it was out of nowhere, is that he was trying to protect his neighborhood, right? I think that he was seeing his neighborhood disappear, and Candyman was a way to protect his neighborhood, and he knew that Candyman could protect his neighborhood because he had in the past. And so I think he was trying to bring Candyman back, because I think a big through line of all the Candyman stories, even going back to the short story, is that basically us telling our stories is what keeps those stories alive, which is a different message. I think that's also buried in there. And so I think that that's Burke's goal, right? Is to make sure the story stays alive, to protect him and people in his situation.
I think too, like
Good
the last line of this movie maybe is what muddled a lot of stuff for me. Cause like I'm always looking for the moral, even in horror, like even in dark movies like Nosferatu. I think they can act in a moral way as being like a, what did I call it? A cautionary tale. I just watched Anora, an Oscar nom, and I think that's like a brilliant cautionary tale about like sex work and people being used materially. But anyway, I'm always looking for the moral, and that last line of like, tell everyone, and then it's just like fade to black. I was like, what? what is the message here? Is it because I get the point of like, these stories were created by like injustice, and the rage of a community is like keeping it afloat in the fire because they rightfully have this rage towards the injustices that are being done on them. But I just hope that the moral point wasn't meet that rage with rage, meet that rage with death, meet that rage with execution. Like that's kind of how we've gotten to a lot of places we have. And I don't think that's the point the movie was making, but I think it gets muddled with that final scene of like the Candyman being used as a weapon, and the final line being like, you've just saw this thing slaughter like 6 people, tell everyone. Like, I'm like, okay, whoa, where's it going?
I took that's interesting that I don't know why, but I think that there's a meta element to this, because my takeaway of that last line wasn't tell everybody that I murdered all these people. It was tell everybody about all of us. Tell everybody about the Candyman. All the men who have died unjustly to police brutality in this case specifically. So that's how I took it. But that is kind of meta. Like that isn't necessarily in the film as much as it is about the world that the film was birthed into, right?
And I took it almost as like his art project of being the kind of outlet that people learn about Candyman. So if it's tell everyone to say Candyman 5 times in a mirror, I'm like, no, don't do that. But
you have to say it 5 times, so it's not, you don't do it accidentally.
Yeah.
There's 2 Cathas for sure.
Then that's on you if you say it all 5 times. But I see the meta level too. So I don't know. I think that's what I'm saying is I didn't know how to walk away from it, and it kind of got muddled for me. And I don't know how to feel about that.
Well, that does feel, again, this is meta too, but it felt like that line's delivered to the audience. So everybody's going to tell everyone in a very different way, you know? And maybe that's what it sort of means too. Is like, depending on how you choose to tell this information, you either do or do not deserve the Candyman. And like, we're going to find out.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what determines whether Candyman comes to protect you or to kill you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's how you told his story, right?
It's how you told his story.
Maybe.
That'd be a good message. And I think the fact that we're
I like
talking
that
about all these
message.
different interpretations.
We love you, Candyman. Just so you know, if you come over here, it's not just out of curiosity. I would never disrespect your time like that. If you end up popping over here, it's because we're talking about you on a podcast. We're trying to tell your story. If you want to pop in as a guest,
I mean, we're open to it.
that'd be dope.
Yeah.
I think
You should go to JP's house.
to reference a previous episode, this teeters in that weird space in my mind of like Smile 2, where I'm like, man, this is a brilliantly executed, well filmed, well acted horror movie that's scary. And I did find this one pretty scary, like subtly so, but I didn't jump or anything, but like some of the scenes I really was terrified.
It's horrific.
But like Smile 2's ending, I just am like, yeah, what is the message? And I think this one's more clear than Smile 2, but that one, it's kind of sitting in the same space, I guess.
Yeah.
I would say this movie, I found it to be very unsettling, but not very scary.
Yeah.
I think it was an uncomfortable movie, and that's on. I'm sure that's on purpose, right?
I think as a movie, or Travis, you can go ahead.
Go, Jeremy.
But I think as a movie, there was a lot that kind of like, I don't know, for me at least, seemed to come out of nowhere. That could just be from me not having watched any other Candyman films. But like,
yeah, that's fair.
Like, you know, at like the very beginning of the movie, they're all coming over to the apartment for like this dinner party, and then the brother's just like, I'm gonna tell a scary story, and then the sister's like, please don't, and he's like, I'm gonna, and he just shuts off all the lights and tells a story about a kid getting kidnapped and almost thrown into a bonfire. Like, okay, is this how you interact with people? Because I do not feel like you would be a chill hang. And
it was essentially
in groups where this happens, though.
It was essentially supposed to be the modern horror equivalent of the old wizard telling a story in a tavern.
I think
to
Jeremy's point about the slasher tropes, that was just the campfire moment. Like those
totally.
happen in all the old
he
70s.
He did
films.
light very small campfires when he told the story.
Many campfires.
It was also the mechanism for them to recap the old movie because you hadn't watched it, right? Which is what they did. Which that was actually a point that I thought was also interesting, is that when he told the story, it was basically about a white woman, right? Like it wasn't about Candyman so much. He told the story about the first movie, but it was about a white woman, which I thought was an interesting reversal.
Yeah.
I think the one other thing, and this isn't as much of a critique as I was like, I got why this wasn't in it, but I was a little sad that it wasn't, is like, I think what made the first Candyman movie scarier is just how Candyman works, of like, he doesn't just kill people, he then like removes himself and you get blamed on the murder. Murder gets blamed on you. Like that's one of the scariest slasher ghosts I've ever seen. And that's not in this movie. And I was like, oh man, I got why it wasn't in the movie, but I was like, that was such a good part of like Candyman of like, you won't just lose your friends deaths will be blamed on you, and that's worse
Yeah.
than
Meaning you
They
lose
kind of
every
in the first-
peripheral friend,
Yeah.
every family member, everybody. Yeah, you
Mhm.
lose everybody. Sorry, JP.
no problem. Yeah, I think in the first one you could actually interpret the whole movie as Candyman doesn't exist at all. That she's just gone
Right.
crazy,
Totally.
and they took that element out of the new Candyman, which was a sad thing to lose. I think.
Mhm.
Well, I think they tried to do both. I think he very much was represented in that regard. Like at first he didn't know why he was doing the things he was doing, why he was so obsessed, and his art was, he just like thought it was his art, essentially, is at least how it felt to me. But then he has that realization. However, it's already established, and we know as an audience that like Candyman definitely exists because you're literally telling me the story of movie one at the start of this
Right.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to agree with Jeremy though. I think it had a little bit of a Dune vibe there, or what I didn't necessarily love about the new Dune movies is if you didn't read the book, I think it was a little hard to follow. And I could see that with Candyman because it does. Again, they tried to sneak in both those things. Like at the end, the cops shoot him and they blame it on that. They're like, "Oh, he killed 3 people, so of course we're going to shoot him." But that's the only time they did it in that movie. I didn't feel like he was blamed for other things before that.
I also just feel like the direction of the movie made it such that it didn't seem as questionable to me that the Candyman was real or wasn't real.
Yeah.
Like the first movie, it felt like it could have all been in their head, but in this movie, there were too many things that happened where like clearly he didn't do that. Clearly he didn't. He was already left the building and she's being dragged around the window, stuff like that.
The first kill, like the woman's throat gets cut like literally by nothing, just invisible.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so this is a real ghost.
This
Yeah,
is,
very much
this
so.
is straight up magic
This is
happening.
this is straight up a haunting. It's not just something fake.
Inventive
Yeah.
use of mirrors, though.
Really?
Cinematographically, I don't know how to say that word.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, very
It's-
good use of mirrors.
crazy good. It keeps the framing so that you are always watching reflective surfaces in every scene of the film.
Yeah. They even start the movie with all the words were backwards. Like from the very beginning of the movie, you're like, okay,
Oh yeah,
that's some good thinking. Good through line.
John Golsarian was the director of photography. He has done a couple movies I'm a fan of. Not a lot of horror films. This is one of his only horror films, but he did About Time, which we've done on this show, which was
Sure.
pretty good. Like Crazy, another romance that was decent. Before we go, Cocaine Bear. Haven't seen it yet,
Hell yeah.
but I heard it was
Cocaine
Great. It was
on
fun.
board.
I mean, as a cinematographer, that movie is like awesome. It's not the same as when you're like the writer of Cocaine Bear or when you're the director of Cocaine Bear. When you're the cinematographer of Cocaine Bear, though, like that
People
could
like,
get you hired on the next
"Ooh."
John Wick movie.
That
You
good.
know, like all
Honestly.
yes.
kinds of steady cam operation and move.
Hell yeah.
Call back to
That's-
something earlier. Nia DaCosta did write the Marvels. So
Oh well,
Wow, Travis.
I'm sorry, Nia.
That
I didn't
Travis.
love your Marvel movie, but I also feel like I'm probably not wrong in saying you probably had 6 studio execs breathing down.
and 2 other writers. She was one of 3. So
Yeah, so
Blame Kevin Feige. Dang it. Kev.
just a floating head, Kevin Feige being like, "You sure
He's
you
in
want to
every
put that in there?"
Yeah,
But
that's
only
what-
if you say his name 13 times. So stop doing that, people. It's not helping.
Kevin Feige 13 times. Pedro, did you say Kevin Feige's name 13? Oh, he did, guys.
Oh,
Okay.
God.
Has he been here this whole time?
I think Kevin.
He's right behind me, isn't he?
He's right behind you. No, but I thought this was really, really well shot. And I really do genuinely mean I am kind of sad that is where Nia went like right away. Like not that make your money, get your dollar bills, but at the same time, I would have liked to see her work a little more in the horror genre before jumping onto the Marvel train. But
You hear that horror
Just think,
genre?
now she's got Marvel money.
she can
do
go
whatever
back.
she
whatever.
wants. Maybe she'll go back. Yeah.
Maybe she'll go back. I hope
Or
so.
she'll
Not going to
make
be a
something
Marvels
else.
2.
And we'll be
No.
like, oh, okay. Like maybe she'll do a Francis Ford Coppola, and make
She
her
she is
version of Dracula.
she is next doing a screenplay for and directing. I've never heard of this, but Henrik Ibsen's renowned stage drama from 1891 titled Hedda.
Sweet. So she's
So-
going into theater.
She's doing that.
That's awesome.
Sick.
But that leads me to a question for you, JP, kind of.
The question is kind of.
The question is kind of related
I'm
to
kind
what-
of JP.
You're kind of JP. The question is kind of related to what I was talking about. You kind of straddle, as you've said, this I feel like difficult subgenre of the horror genre of that kind of middle adult, not so scary that you're gonna wet your bed, but still scary enough to be classified as horror. What are some of the difficulties that you found in keeping like a PG-13 rating stamped on your books and keeping it entertaining for that middle adult age group?
That's a good question. I wish I could say it's some great masterminded plan, but at the beginning it was more fortuitous, more accidental. It's kind of what I wrote. And then I had to stick with it. So what actually was hard related to that is I wrote the first couple of books and they kind of just ended up there. And then the publisher was like, we're going to put these in horror. And I'm like, oh, I better make them scarier. So then I started trying to make them scarier. And then my beta readers were like, that's too scary. That's not what we're into. That's not why we picked up the series. What are you doing? And so that's been the challenge, is like backing back off of that and finding the part of me that wrote those first books, but also acknowledging the part of me that likes horror and wants to write scarier things.
Mhm.
And so I think what I landed on is my horror is much more turned inward. So it's not a lot of gore. It's not the monsters that are scary. It's the situation that is scary for the character, for my main characters. So, what they're going through and what it means to them and the threat that it means to them becomes more of the focus, because you can get away with that PG-13 all day long because it's not gory or sexualized or anything like that. So I think that's kind of where I ended up with it, and kind of the guiding principle. It's also kind of a type of horror that I've always liked. I like some of my favorite horror is probably sci-fi horror and comedy horror, neither which are super scary. So I tried to borrow from those subgenres as much as I could, even though I would say none of my books are really in those genres.
Mm-hmm. And I think I asked that because I was thinking about, I do love, as much as I've been saying I'm sad about it, I do love when directors genre hop and when they kind of like find middle grounds and creative ways to move. And I think Jordan Peele did that so well with, Key and Peele sketch show. You're like, oh, what's this guy going to do next? Oh, he's going to become one of the most like prolific horror directors of the 21st century. That's not on my bingo card. So that was pretty cool.
Comedians hurt the most.
And then another question I have for you is like, do spoilers for people who maybe haven't read your book, are lives at stake? Because that's one thing I've found with a lot of that middle grade horror, PG-13 horror, PG-13 things in general that I don't love, is like there's not as much like death and heartache and loss.
Yeah, that's also a good question. So that is hard. That is problematic, because in my first book they kill a cheetah, and I can't tell you how many people were mad about that. And that's a cheetah. That's not even a human. So yeah, that's definitely something that I had to be careful of. So generally, if people die in my books, they kind of deserved it. They're usually the bad guys, or they did something bad and they had it coming. It's kind of the only way I can get away with that. And so it did require me to find new stakes, because you're right, you need stakes. There has to be something at stake. And so finding out what that was a challenge, and something I focused pretty heavily on. So sometimes that's the stake of losing a relationship, maybe, or losing your status, or like my main character, she wants to hunt monsters, so like losing the ability to do that, or in some cases losing her autonomy in doing that. It comes up as well, becomes more of what's at stake. And I think that maybe is also a key to writing kind of that PG-13 horror is the stakes can't be gory death, because parents won't let their kids read that. So I do have there is death. It's just not usually the characters you're super attached to, and so yeah.
Yeah, because in Misty Lake, there's some early death.
Yeah,
but again,
there's-
it's sort of that classic supernatural, like
Yeah,
monster.
it's the cold
preview.
open. Yeah,
The cold open with the monster preview. Yeah.
And then actually that book, The Devil in Misty Lake, The Devil in Misty Lake and the Kraken that came under definitely has the highest body count because people are just dying left and right, but you don't know who they are. They're just like they're red shirts. They're just going in to get eaten by a monster. So you get away with that too. Yeah.
Parents are okay with letting their kids see red shirts murdered.
Yeah, exactly.
Just not
Yeah,
people.
red
I think
shirts are
because
hard
there's
for
not that
people.
emotional weight, right? Like I think if I killed my main character or my main character's best friend, I think the emotional trauma of that is what parents don't want their kids consuming, you know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can't introduce a character be like this guy is Jeff and he just finished paying off his student loans and now he's gonna get eaten by a monster.
He never even got to enjoy that time.
Yeah. That is one thing too that I see. Like I love that you said that you have to find different stakes, and I think that does make a lot of the. I'm thinking specifically of like the Redwall novels that I was a very big fan of as a kid. They had stakes, but you never didn't see them coming. Like Salamandra, what is the Badger Lord's name? Clay, do you remember? Anyway, the main
like it's Salamandra though.
Oh, sorry, Salamandra. That like book, you kind of knew just by his personality that like the main Earthstripe the Strong.
Hell yeah, it was Earthstripe the Strong, dude.
That he was gonna die because he's like this warrior Beowulf type character written for children, and like even as a kid, you can kind of intuitively see like this guy's gonna go down in a blaze of glory, and I think seeing that coming actually helped the story. And then those stakes are still there because the stake becomes like, can he keep his stronghold, Salamandra? Can he keep that? And like, there's real fear that he's going to lose it at a certain point. So I really like that you pointed to it because I didn't really notice that until you said that of like, yeah, you just shift those stakes over to something else to keep that tension. Are your new books? They're not in middle grade. They're kind of. Are you going?
Yeah, the new book. Yeah, the new book is older. I don't think it's going to be terribly scary. I think it's more leaning towards horror comedy. So I still think it's going to be light. But yeah, it's going to be dealing with a full adult woman being possessed by a demon. So less of the kind of new adult. I think that'll work out because the new adults who read my books, they'll be adults by now. So should be fine.
Yeah, the old Harry Potter trick. Just grow up.
Yeah, just grow up with them. Exactly.
I have another question for everybody this time because this is something I'm thinking about now with the movie Candyman. I think it did well at this, and I think there's movies and books I've read that don't do well at this. Of if you're trying to tell a clear message about a clear like social issue or a clear issue of any kind, and you're tying your story and even death into that, I wonder. I don't know how to phrase this question exactly. What do you think about when a very specific demographic of thing or person or type is always on the chopping block, so you know what characters are going to die, and like how do movies keep that tension even with that? Obviously, they probably shift it, like you've said, JP, but with Candyman, not to its detriment, I kind of knew that character's black, they're good. That character's white, they're probably going to die. And like it played to the message. But have you seen examples of that in literature with any kind of theme? And like, what is it about it when it works? And what is it about it that does not work when it happens?
Something that I thought of while you were saying that is that the thing about putting a message, a social message, or any kind of strong message in a work of art is I think that what Candyman runs the risk of is preaching to the choir. If your goal is to get this message out to people who need to hear it, I think you're going to fail if you're too blunt, because they're just going to immediately turn around and leave because they're not comfortable. I think Candyman does an amazing job of making you very uncomfortable with race issues and racial injustice. And if you're not willing to sit with that, you're just going to walk away from the movie. And so I think that sometimes the best way to do a social message is to make it subtle enough that anyone can consume it and kind of stew that play has something to say. I think that's what that meant on my screen.
Yes. I think that's a really good point. And I think they do that. They make us comfortable by starting with art, you know? They start with like a marginalized society that everyone can understand, regardless of your circumstances. I think almost everybody on some level sees himself as artistic, you know? Now, there are definitely some people who probably outright object that idea, and identify as something that sees artistic as not valuable or whatever. But for the most part, I think we're all creative. We're all artistic in some way. And so starting the movie with that and showing that as sort of this part of the oppression, I think is really helpful for bridging the gap there, making it understandable.
Yeah. I think, I mean, to sort of answer Travis's question, like making this work, I think it all comes down to the fact that when Candyman shows up, people aren't surviving him coming after them. Like, if people could get away from him and be okay, then there would be something lost, and not only in like the power of the Candyman, but also in like just, oh, if you can just get away, it's kind of your own fault if you died to this guy. And any commentary that's supposed to be overlaid on top of that just comes down to, you know, doing enough cardio.
Yeah. I think what Clay said and JP, I'm thinking of the art critic character, because I think another way that, like to your point, JP, of making the audience kind of comfortable enough to receive the blunt message is pointing a little bit of like a critical truth back at yourself. And I think they do that with the art critic. And like her first scene, she kind of critiques the piece of like, it's artists that are like usually at the forefront of the gentrification, and like a lot of these rich people who think that like they can use suffering and poverty as a showpiece. And like I think there's a little nugget of truth in that, but then it kicks that truth right back in our face when, as soon as things get violent and like pop culture-y, she's like, oh, I want to review your piece now. And it's like, oh, now you're interested? Like as soon as it's in breaking news and as soon as there's something tied to it that she's interested in, she just loses all her values that she like purported to have. So I thought that was a really good way of like, okay, we're willing to criticize ourselves and our own message, but we're going to tell you the like straight truth as well. So, because I'm always way more open to like listening to someone in a debate when they start with kind of this like, listen, here's what I think. I know that I'm not, and this is what I usually try and do. Like, I know I'm not right about everything. Like, you made some really good points, but now let me tell you what I think. And I think that's a good way to approach people. And they did it pretty well there.
Yeah.
I agree. That worked really well for me. Me too. She's literally talking about herself when she's doing that. And you will see that, you will see that in every industry. Somebody who comes up high in an industry and does it for a long time is going to start to see that industry in a different way. And oftentimes, if maybe you've been in a certain job too long or you're getting a bit jaded with it, then you're going to see the industry in a cynical way. You're going to judge your rise to success against everybody else in some subjective way that's not really true of the industry as a whole. And she represents that. She represents that person that comes in, sees some art, and is like, seen it a million times. It's like, yeah, that's just because you don't know who this person is, and you haven't like really read into the story. You're just judging it on your filter, whatever filter you have. And who knows if you had enough wine or too much at this art gallery showing. Like, where are you at in your process? You know, I think about that as a editor, like working for a couple presses. Like, I do a lot of reading stories and accepting or denying them, and it's like you have to be mindful of like of what you let through the filter and what you like, how you read things, going into it with the right frame of mind, you know. And it's really interesting to think about that industry perspective and how cynical it can come off, and that's kind of where it comes from, I think. Hopefully that wasn't too rambly or made sense. Jeremy.
Yeah. Well, I
Save
think
me.
okay. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll sound so smart doing it, I swear. But no, I think it is really like fitting with the whole Candyman thing, being summoned in a mirror thing, to have somebody criticizing art, which is by its nature a mirror of reality, and looking into a mirror. And because whenever you go into something artistic, you are not looking objectively at art, you are looking at what you are bringing to that art. So the art exhibition, his exhibition, is a mirror with some shit behind it, and that's where, you know, the real art is. And then, you know, that's just carried through the entire thing. But I don't know, what does JP have to say about stuff?
I think I've got to imagine, as a writer of the movie, that as a writer of any movie, you have to be thinking, I'm going to release this movie, critics are going to watch it. So I think that her character was also just a dig at critics in general, right? It was them saying, I don't care what you think, in the middle of the movie, to the critics that they were afraid that they might get when the movie released.
Yeah, and I like those times when you can just point the finger at someone so directly, are kind of fun when they're done really right. Which I think this movie did a good job. And the critic debate is a fun one, I think. Because, like, I don't know. Do we need them? Do we not need them? Are they useful? I find them useful a lot of the times. I also don't understand where they're coming from a lot of the times. And just, like, making a job out of analyzing things is such a weird concept.
I mean, I for one would love
but
to
that's kind of
build a
what we're
career.
doing.
Yeah, I want that job
Dude,
too. Yeah.
I would love to build a career out of just being an elitist culture snob out of touch with the common man. Frankly, that's the dream.
Well, you are out of touch with the common man. You just have to get the elite, the culture, and the snob down. And
Yeah,
you'll be good to go.
You know, those are 3 hurdles I've yet to overcome.
I have the snob. You can borrow the snobbery from me, because I
thanks.
I have it in droves.
That's very big of you.
Now one of us just needs to get fabulously wealthy, and we'll be ready to go.
Pedro?
Because Pedro. Oh, we're already doing it on this
Come
podcast.
on, Pedro.
We're already doing it, you guys. We're doing it right now, literally. That's the only thing I was thinking as you were saying that. I was like, I think we're doing that actually right
now.
fucking now, bud.
Yep.
You're doing it as we speak.
But that is the
moment.
thing, and I would love to hear your guys' comments on it. Like, that, to me, it's almost, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. It's almost, to me, like when people say the NFL conspiracy of, like, all the games are rigged. No one's, I'm like, at a certain point, every one of those players on the field was like a little kid who wanted to be a football player. And they grew up. And if you think that the whole system's rigged, you have to believe that at a certain point, every single one of those players gets sat down in a meeting room and told, this is the way the game's going to go. And they all accept that and don't say anything. And I'm like, I can't believe that's true.
It's not.
For the same reason, this is how this ties in. Like, I think sometimes we want to look at critics as like the elite snobs who are completely out of touch with the common man, but they all were us. Like, we don't have a following right now, but we're really what, like 100,000 subscribers away from just being in the same category as those people. So I'm like, do I really turn my nose down at them? Like, I don't want to be as critical of the critics when I maybe should view them as like, they're just me, hopefully in 10 years. You know?
I don't know. I'll throw some stones in this glass house. I'm fine with that.
You got to let people in. And the best way to do that in a glass house is to break all the windows, baby. Break
sure
your glass ceiling.
I'm sure that every one of those critics, though, also were sitting in your chair right now and saying, "But I'm not going to be like that when I get the big following. I'm not going to be elite. I'm going to be one of the everymen."
Mhm.
And that's what separates us from them, right, JP?
That's right. That's right.
That's
We'll
right.
never
We are
sell out.
not cautionary tales.
Dude, I sell out so fast.
I would just so quickly.
I will do the opposite of caution you against that. If you get offered the opportunity to make a fantastic amount of money doing what you love, you should take that opportunity.
Yeah.
If someone tries to
even
buy
if you get an
you
opportunity to barely make any money doing something you love, you should take that opportunity.
Probably take that opportunity.
I do. I take like 600 of those opportunities a year.
Yep.
It all adds up to enough money eventually.
600 whole dollars.
Hell yeah.
I would sell out so hard just
Like,
at the
Send me the
slightest
contract.
opportunity. Please.
But yeah, I have to, I guess my final little point on that is I have to believe that not all of them are snobs completely out of touch with the common man, that some of them really did make it and keep their souls.
100%.
Because if I don't believe that, then what am I doing here? Like, I don't want to, I don't want to become, if I believe the NFL conspiracy and I'm that kid playing football, then it's like, well, why do I even keep playing this game then? Because where's it leading? What's the end goal? And
well, we don't have to worry about that till we get like 100,000 more followers.
Exactly.
We can just live. We can just live in this right now.
This episode's gonna do it.
Yeah, as much as we like, it's okay to worry about the trappings of success when you have success.
Let me have my existential crisis on air, okay?
By all means, it was rude of me to interject with.
Don't
realism.
interject my existential crisis.
Have a little goddamn sensitivity, Jeremy.
I'm trying. I thought the gin would help, but it didn't.
Why did you think that?
I don't know.
Gin has never helped that situation.
I mean, I'm feeling pretty good about it, but clearly, I'm the only one.
Well, shall we rate the Candyman?
I think so.
Just Candyman. Just Candyman.
Yeah, okay.
We're only going to rate one of the Candymen, Travis.
It's the whole damn hive, Jeremy.
Fine, we can rate the hive. God.
Oh, that was one trivia fact I forgot to say, is apparently in the script, all uses of the word BE were spelled BEE, just for a little chuckle while they read it.
That's awesome. I like that.
Yep.
Defying spell check at every turn.
Yep.
Nice.
Tries to autocorrect and you just keep putting the extra E. Like, I know what I'm about.
Yeah. Add it to the dictionary.
Leave me alone.
It's the same as a normal beat, but in Candyman.
Well, Jeremy.
Who, me?
Yeah. I'm just calling the shots now. I just took over. I'm sorry, Clayton.
No, you should. You should do that.
Please do.
What would you rate in our totally arbitrary, completely pointless and useless rating system of how many drinks does it take to enjoy Candyman 2021, not 1992? How many drinks does it take for you to enjoy Candyman 2021 to its fullest?
Well, I mean, obviously, my first answer is to go with 5 for the number of times you have to say Candyman in order to summon him.
Yeah.
But now knowing that it was initially going to be 13, I think you need to up that. You really need to commit to the whole thing. And then, of course, add 1 for Zeb and 1 for Jeff C. Carter, holding it down in the chat.
Hell yeah. What up, Jeff? What up, Zeb?
Yeah. Yeah, hey guys, don't think I ever forgot about you. You're my
Never.
babies.
Not a chance.
And we won't forget about you when we're snobby critics.
I
With a
will.
million-
I probably will, actually, yeah. But right now, ooh, you're bringing that number all the way to 15.
all the way to 15. All
And
right.
you know what? Let's bring it up again for every time there's some what I now know are references to the original films that don't really feel like they make sense in the context of the movie. We'll say it's 19. 19 drinks.
All right. 19 drinks.
Okay.
Clayton.
I like 5. That was going to be my answer. I
Yeah.
would say 5. Don't drink them in front of the mirror.
Yeah.
Unless you have somebody you really need to weaponize Candyman against, but I don't think that's a good message for this movie. So
I'm
I would
pretty
say
sure
just
if you
drink
take
5
five,
like
I'm pretty sure if you take 5 shots in front of the mirror, you only summon Captain Morgan. So
that's a good line, Jeremy.
That
Props
was a
to you
good
for that line.
Well,
Good.
thank you.
Or Mel Gibson. Sorry.
No.
Gross.
You have to torture yourself in the front of the mirror. This is Mel Gibson, and it's really not worth it. Trust me.
Takes forever.
Those scars never heal.
I know that was me and Pedro. I'm sorry. He knows him personally.
You gotta be cool.
All right, JP.
That was
Well, since I don't drink, it's hard for me to answer that question. So I'm going to answer it with what is this minimal amount of popcorn I'd be okay with and still enjoy this movie?
good.
Yeah.
Move.
So
Good.
yeah,
That's pretty
so
good.
I think
Lot
even with
safer
the
than
small
mine.
popcorn, I would enjoy this movie. So
Even with the small.
even with the small.
Nice. That's a good rating system. I like
It's a
that
very
one.
good rating system. I would have to say I'm going mead specifically because
Yeah,
honey.
honey.
Naturally, yeah.
Gotta be mead. And I'm gonna have a mead for every time one of the characters says nope to doing something that's gonna get them killed. And I think
Sure.
that'll come out to like 6 meads, which I think is the perfect level of buzz to where you'll probably go into the bathroom and say like 3 Candymans, and then you'll be like, nah, and go sit down.
I'm
But like
Yeah,
one
don't-
more mead and you're doing all 5. And we don't want to be there. We don't want to be there. Okay. We want to get to like 3 and be like, nope, I'm smarter than this, and go sit down. So
yeah, good call.
6
So hang
mead.
on a minute. That's a really good question. Now, if you say 3 Candymans before chickening out, and then you come back to the mirror later on, do you only have to say 2 to finish it?
I get
Great. It's an age-old question.
the impression that it has to be in a succession.
I do too.
If
Like
you
all
say
at
something
once.
between every Candyman, you get to do it forever.
You're good.
You can
So-
say 20 Candymans if you
Yeah,
want,
okay.
as long as you go Candyman, Pop Tart.
Or what if you split up the candy and the man?
Candy, man.
He knows the difference whether you put a space in there or not. He knows.
Or if you
That's
say
just
the,
a really long hyphen, my guy.
if you say
Just-
the Candyman, the Candyman.
Oh
The
yeah, there you
Candyman.
go. Then you've got one in between every
I
time.
think maybe then you just summon the original, though.
That'd be
That's
too bad.
possible. That's
It's
possible.
not going to be any better for you.
No,
Yeah.
probably worse.
Probably
Tony-
worse.
Yeah,
Tony
it's gonna-
Todd is a
it's gonna go
scary
bad.
dude.
Yeah.
He's a scary dude. All right, JP, could you tell us where we'll find your stuff and where our listeners and viewers can give you support and love, because you're a great author.
Thank you. Yeah, you can find my books anywhere you buy books. They're in ebook, they're in paperback, they're in audiobook, so they're all the places. I am JP Barnett, and I am the most prominent one right now anyway on Google, so you should be able to find me pretty easily. I'm always doing events in the Pacific Northwest. I'll be at Emerald City Comic Con next 3 weeks from now, I think. I'll be at Crypticon the month after that, and I'm all over the place. If you want to find me, you can find me pretty easily.
Fantastic.
Very sick.
Thanks so much for coming on, JP.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
And thank you, listeners. We really appreciate you being out there hearing our stupid voices droll on for like 2 hours straight. Truly a marvelous feat for all of you. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
We had 5 viewers. That's the most we've had on live, I think.
I think so too.